Good morning, ladies, and welcome to City of Edinburgh Council meeting. We're planning, after your deputation, going straight into the motion 9.7. So once everything is concluded, you can leave and sit in the public gallery and listen to it. You have 10 minutes to make up to 10 minutes to make your deputation, at which point, if there are any questions from elected members, we'll have a period of time for that.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Hi, my name is Rachel. I'm a family support worker from L.I.FT, Low Income Families Together. We're based down in Muirhouse Millennium Centre, and this is Polly, my manager. I was homeless myself in 2017 for over a year with my 2 kids. We were placed in 3 bed and breakfasts before given a PSL in Muirhouse. The work I'm doing with L.I.FT is homelessness and advocacy support. I have been working since September last year and finding myself saying the same things to the clients I work with now that Pauline said to me when she was my support worker. Nothing has changed. Yes, bed and breakfasts have got fridges and washing machines and cooking facilities put in place, but this has only been put in place since December. But families are being separated now. They've been placed in different bed and breakfasts on different floors from their children. I have had the most stressful time recently due to a family being separated from their mum in 2 different bed and breakfasts. And if they would have been placed in a temporary flat rather than a bed and breakfast, they would have been together. For families, it's not just about having no cooking facilities or washing facilities. It has a massive effect on their mental health and their children's mental health. My son every day still asks me, "Mummy, when do we have to move again?" And every day I have to explain to him this is for our forever home. It's been a long journey to get here, to get a forever home, but Andrew is still traumatised by the time he spent in a bed and breakfast. Seeing figures like 12.8 million spent on bed and breakfast horrifies me. How can that be, in this day and age, still be sending families to filthy bed and breakfasts? But because they can now wash their own clothes and eat before 9 o'clock, that's okay. I have some quotes from families that had an experience in the bed and breakfast, and I'd like you to listen and read. "We were not allowed any cutlery, plates or mugs, and then the staff says, 'We have been watching you on camera and now we can trust you, so we'll give you some forks and spoons.' I was worried sick that they were watching us on camera. It's stressful enough without that. I was in a separate room from my 2 boys. They were on the 3rd floor. I was on the 2nd with my daughter. My mental health was really bad due to losing my home. Then being put in a bed and breakfast and spending nights away from the boys, I would have rather stayed in a temp house or a flat so we could all be together. There was somewhere to cook, a fridge, but no one seemed to care that my wee girl was covered in bed bugs. The health visitor said that if she hadn't been aware that I was living in a dirty bed and breakfast with bed bugs, I would have had a welfare concern form in from the social worker. So you can imagine, when I see the amount, 12.1 million being spent on bed and breakfast, I wonder why. Why are families separated from other families and being put in places with dirty for unfit kids? I remember being here in 2017 and asked why, and now I'm here again in 2019 asking the same question. I would like to be able to tell my families I meet why do they have to go into bed and breakfast and potentially being separated from their kids. So today I'm asking, why are we spending so much money on bed and breakfasts, and why nearly 2 years down the line, what happened to me is still happening to others? Thank you.
Are you wishing to make any contribution, Pauline? Or?
I just thought it would be better coming for Rachel because she's been here before, and coming again, I can say I think everybody's heard me a million times. So I thought today, because I've now employed Rachel to work for L.I.FT, which is great because she can help families. She knows how it feels. She knows exactly what the process is going to be. But for Rachel, it's frustrating because families are now being separated because there's reasons why they're not in the same bed and breakfast. Families are on different floors for their kids. And for Rachel, it's just frustrating that this is where she was 2 years ago and she's still here 2 years down the line. What we're looking for as an organisation is to be able to tell people the correct information. So feedback would be good after you have your conversation today. Just someone let us know. A lot of people have our email anyway, just so that we know we're telling them the correct information. We keep on saying, "Oh, you're not got it." Yes, you are. "Oh, you're not got a bed and breakfast at Stopping." No, yes, you are. So We just want to know as an organisation we're given, for Rachel, given the correct information. That's what she does. She works with homeless families.
Okay, thank you very much. First question, I have Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Lord Provost. Hello, Rachel and Pauline. Lovely to see you. My question relates to, could you share with Council just some idea? I mean, it's harrowing to hear the experiences that you've shared with us this morning. But could you give an idea, please, of the number of families that have been affected in a similar way to you, Rachel, and children? And in particular, with temporary accommodation, do you think it would be much better for the families also to have temporary accommodation near where they live anyway, rather than being sent to other, across the city and having to travel distances to schools and so forth? Are there other things that we could do in addition to the motion we're going to be discussing?
Yeah, our funding, we just got new funding back in January, and one of the things that I put forward is, I'm a big scrounger, so I'm asking, can we have some money for bus passes? Because the council, you've got to be able to get your bus tickets reimbursed if you're staying away and you're bringing your kids back and forth to school. You have to pay this service charge that we all hear about. And this service charge, it's because it's not paid by direct debit, they're just not paying it. And there's no other way of saying it, they're not paying it. If they don't pay it, they can't have their tickets reimbursed. So bus passes for the first month is what we're giving out to our families, so they're able to get the kids to school. Mums, do you get any money for mum to get bus passes back to school? The families are still being sent, over the other end of the city, they're still 2.5 hours travelling on buses. We are still working with such a high number of people that are in bed and breakfast and put in temporary accommodation away at the other side of town. So for us, we cover the whole of the north, which is the H4 and the H5, but we're now at Gilmerton, Lochend, L.I.FT. I mean, the staff are everywhere, and we're travelling to them now, so rather than them having to travel to us, or if they're coming in during the day to put their kids in school, we're providing breakfast and keeping them occupied during the day. So I think it is looking, I know we keep saying, please try and get a PSL because you can pick your postcodes. So I think if there was more PSL available, that would be a massive, and I know that, I've spoke to Kate before, and I know that's what you're looking at, but, for the families that are stuck in these bed and breakfasts or these temporary accommodations already, what do we do with these? They want to come back into the north where their kids are at school. So we have loads of families we work with, and every day there's another one. It's an ongoing battle for us.
Councillor Day.
I'm sure we can hear you.
So I'll take Ian Perry's. Oh, well, there you go. Thank you for deputation this morning. You'll have been aware of Councillor Watt's motion on the agenda today to try and look at how we can get some exit strategy from the use of bed and breakfast and the excellent work we've done through the Homelessness Task Force. I suppose my question is, would you accept that one of the main implications of this has been the benefit caps that's made a number of parents become homeless and need to present homeless and end up in bed and breakfast accommodation. None of us here want to have anybody in bed and breakfast accommodation, and that's the purpose of today's motion, to try and look at an alternative. So would you agree that this is directly as a result of the Westminster Government's benefit caps, and would you also agree to work with us and meet with Councillor Watt, myself, Councillor Cameron and Councillor Campbell to look at how you can influence what we bring forward to the Council?
Oh yeah, without a doubt it's been the benefit cap. As soon as that happened, within one day no paying any rent, and then suddenly you were to pay £93, we had one family a week of the same money they had before, was an instant impact on people being given notice to quits and stuff, yeah, without a doubt. And now we're finding the universal credits having the same impact because no one knows how much rent they have to pay. So we have this biggest majority, with people presume that because we're low-income families that everybody's on benefits, they know they're actually working as well, and we have families who are working in temporary accommodation, and work poverty is massive because universal credits can't tell you any information until after the assessment period. So they come and ask us how much rent am I paying, and when I'm asking, they say it's be a case manager, and I'm like, where's the case manager? Case manager's in Dundee. Can I phone them? No. Can they tell me? No. Nothing can be told till after the 5 weeks. So people are getting into more debt again because the advance payment is paid to them rather than the landlord. So we're in this whole scenario. Nobody knows what they're paying, when they're paying, how much they're paying. So between the benefit cap and now universal credits, it's all a nightmare. You know, and we're trying, as I say, as feedback's good for us, so working with you would be excellent, because we need to be able to tell our clients the correct information. Job centre can't tell me. Housing benefit can't tell me. Somebody needs to tell me, you know. I'm turning into this, like, put this warning sign up and didn't let her in, but we need to know for our clients. We are working with some of the most vulnerable clients in Edinburgh, and we need to be able to give them some kinds of information where they're going to feel safe, you know.
Councillor Kate Campbell.
Thank you, Lord Provost, and thank you, Rachel and Pauline, for your deputation today. There's quite a lot of things that I'm not going to make a speech, don't worry, I know. Some of them get upset when I speak for too long. But in terms of PSL, I'm really glad that you said that, because that's been an absolutely massive focus for us. It takes a bit of time to get through the contract, but we're bringing more in. We've also had more from our housing association partners bringing on temporary flats, and at the moment Nikki Brown, who you'll know, is working on a framework to bring in more temporary flats that will come from the private sector. In terms of the advice, I think that's also a really good point. So would you be happy to have a meeting with me and Nikki? We could talk about the situation as things are, the numbers in B&B, and also making sure that you've got the right advice to give to families.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Aldridge.
Thanks very much, Lord Provost, and thanks very much for your very powerful deputation. I was particularly horrified to hear from Rachel that there are still families where children are separated from the parents. And I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit more on that. I sat on the homelessness task force with colleagues, and we did go to a bed and breakfast, and we saw a family who were in that specific situation. It's absolutely awful when people are separated. Could you tell us a bit more about whether people are being separated within the same premises, or whether they're even in different premises? I mean, one is bad enough, the other would be absolutely horrific. So I'd just like to hear a little bit more about that, if possible.
Well, I've got a client at the moment, right, and she's been separated from her 2 children. She's in Princess Street, and her 2 kids are on Ferry Road. So, Susan was in, what was she?
Same bed and breakfast.
Same bed and breakfast, but different floors.
3rd floor, her 2 kids were in, her and her daughter were in the bottom floor. So every night she was spent in there was away from her children. But bearing in mind you're paying for 2 rooms now as well, so, and now you're paying for 2 bed and breakfast, it doesn't make any sense, you know.
Councillor Arthur.
Rachel, I really just wanted to thank you for coming along today. I was actually ashamed listening to your description of bed bugs and the state of the properties you'd lived in. But I find myself feeling a little bit angry there now we're talking about families that are being separated. So I want to apologise to you on behalf of everybody here for what you've been through. I really do. I think before you came in, we had a talk from a minister from my ward, and he talked about the importance he found in his life about making a difference to people and how they lived. And it seems to me you've taken that really negative experience and you're using that to help other people. And I think that's one positive thing that's come out of that. So I just wanted to ask you how important that is to you to be able to help other people who are now in the same position that you were a year ago or 2 years ago.
It's massively important because I've got the experience and I know what people are going through. It's nice to see when people are coming in and saying, oh, I'm going to end up homeless. It's nice to turn around and say to them, oh, I'm going to be homeless, but it's nice to say, it's all right, I've been there. And it's like a weight's just been lifted off their shoulders, and it makes me feel so good because they're coming to me and I can support them emotionally, mentally. Like, I can sit and talk to them, I can take them out. So, yeah, it's massively important to me.
Okay, we're just about at the end of time for this question, but Councillor Young, last question.
Thank you very much, Provost. Firstly, thank you very much for coming and sharing your personal story as well as those examples from colleagues. And I'm sorry that you're in a situation where you're having to come back to this council 2 years later with the same issues, because that's obviously not acceptable. I'm a parent of 2 very young children, so if you don't mind, I'd like to come back to that point about the split families. What kind of ages are we talking about where they're on different floors in a building, or indeed in different guest houses in different places? Because I imagine that's not obvious. I appreciate that's not happening with very young children, but it's to understand at what point are we starting to split families up. I'm interested in a bit. Thank you.
The split family, Susan's son was 16 and her other son was 9, so they were in one room, and her 11-year daughter and her were in another room. They were in the same bed and breakfast, but 3rd floor and ground floors massively different, and especially where it was, because it's horrible. And the family that we're talking about just now, there's this big debate about whether they were paying for her bed and breakfast, so they decided they'd pay for the 2 children, which was 17 and 15, and they wouldn't pay for her. So she actually physically phoned Rachel at 9 o'clock one night when it was pouring rain, and she was on the streets and the kids were in Ferry Road bed and breakfast. Then we fought it and we've managed to get her, but she's in Princess Street and now they're paying for it. So why would they not just leave them where they were in the first place? And to be fair, they were evicted for the worst bed and breakfast in Edinburgh. That was our point. It's like, what is going on here? You know, it's not even like it's a big... They've put her in better bed and breakfast now than where they was in the first place, but they're now paying for 2 bed and breakfasts. They were on 1 room. So you were paying the £57, which is how much it cost in that bed and breakfast. You are now actually paying for 2 rooms and 2 separate bed and breakfasts. So she's now rushing in the morning to get along to Ferry Road, still to get her kids to school for her to get uni. It's crazy, you know. And this is true. This is all true. You know.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies, for your very strong deputation and for the answers to your questions. We will now move on to that item in the agenda. So if you want to stay in the public area, you'll be able to hear the debate and the conclusion that we come to. Thank you again. Excuse me, this is a meeting. This is not for public interaction with the meeting. This is a meeting held in public. Now, I'll ask you, please, to refrain from making comment, or I will have to ask you to leave the public gallery. Alan.
Item 9.7 is the agenda motion by Cllr Watt on funding of temporary accommodation for homeless people.
Cllr Watt.
Thank you, Provost. I think that everybody in this chamber has heard so eloquently from Rachel and Pauline at L.I.FT a lot of what I was going to say, so I'll keep this very brief. According to the current Scottish Government statistics, 44% of people who lose their accommodation, it is through absolutely no fault of their own. They're simply, asked to leave by a landlord or whatever reason. That's 44% of people who they have no fault whatsoever. There's nothing they could have done. They've simply lost their accommodation. And the best that we can do is put them in completely unsuitable bed and breakfast accommodation that costs a fortune and is, of not good value. I think Rachel and Pauline also said that this is happening. Many of these people will be in work. How they manage to hold down their jobs and look after their children in these circumstances is simply amazing. But we need to do more to help. We need to get better value for the huge amount of money that we're spending on this. I hope that everybody in this chamber would agree with that, and that we're looking to officers, to Pauline and Rachel, and amongst ourselves to come up with creative solutions that will make a real difference to these citizens of Edinburgh. Thank you.
And to second the motion, Councillor Kate Campbell.
Thank you, Lord Provost. Our rapid rehousing transition plan will be at committee next week. It's a long document, but it's based on a simple equation: reduce homeless presentations and increase the supply of social housing. When your homeless presentations are equal to the number of social homes that you let to homeless households, then you eliminate the need for temporary accommodation. Simple, right? It's a really good framework, but it will be extremely challenging for us in Edinburgh. I've spent the last 2 years immersed in this, meeting with third sector partners, RSLs, discussing at length with our officers, and most importantly, listening to people with lived experience. We're already making progress, but I'm sorry to say there are no easy answers. In Edinburgh, the pressures are so great. On supply, social housing stock is one of the lowest of any local authority at just 15% compared to 24% as the national average, and rents are some of the highest in Scotland. We're doing great work on prevention, but as you've heard from the deputation, welfare reform keeps making it harder. It will take lots of hard work, dedication and commitment. We have to be resourceful and inventive, and we have to look at multiple solutions, attacking the problem from every angle, as I so often hear myself saying. The Scottish Government have absolutely led from the front on this through the £50 million Ending Homeless Together Fund, the adoption of Housing First, and by putting the Homelessness and Rough Sleeping Action Group together and then taking the recommendations that have come out of it seriously. The Rapid Rehousing Transition Plan is one of the key recommendations, and every local authority will have to produce them from now on. Through our Homelessness Task Force, we've done an incredible amount of work already. The guidance from HARSAC specifically says that where temporary accommodation can't be avoided, the preference should always be to provide scattered temporary flats. We're already doing this. We've extended the PSL contract. We're working with our amazing housing associations who've provided additional temporary flats. And we're working on a framework to bring even more temporary flats from the private sector. And it is having an impact. The number of families in B&B has come down significantly and continues to decrease from a high of 84 in February last year, which was completely unacceptable, to 12 today. We will continue to bring on additional temporary flats, and we will take families out of B&B this year. But it will take time to end the use of temporary accommodation in Edinburgh for good. So we need to look at all models of temporary accommodation, whether that's working with third sector partners to increase supported accommodation, finding better quality solutions of low support models, shared tenancies, supported lodgings. These are all important components and part of an extensive and long-term plan. But the supply of social housing is the most important element in all of this. I wanted to briefly mention figures because £12 million is a lot of money. As well as being the amount of money that we spent on temporary accommodation, it's also the figure for the additional grant funding that we got from the Scottish Government to build social homes this year alone. That's just the additional. Hoovered up because other local authorities hadn't managed to spend their full allocation and because our pipeline of new homes is so strong. That's on top of the £37 million that we were already allocated, taking us to £49 million of grant funding spent on building homes. And that's just the grant-funded part. Over the next 5 years, we will spend £677 million on building homes. Building council homes is the solution and must at all times remain our #1 priority. Very happy to second the motion.
Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Lord Provost. And could I start by saying thank you to my colleague, Councillor Arthur, for expressing his gratitude to the deputation, because it is a difficult experience to go through, and I think it's hugely inspiring that the staff and the team at L.I.FT provide the support and encouragement to people who are displaced, people in Edinburgh who are displaced from their homes, as we've heard from Councillor Watt, through no fault of their own, displaced from their belongings because they're having to live their lives in a room in a bed and breakfast that is and I've seen for myself pictures of the bed bugs. So I really welcome this motion coming forward. We have to get not just better value for the public pound and how we address this problem, but we have to make a difference to the people's lives who are being affected by homelessness in this city. It saddens me that we haven't had any indication from the Scottish Government about what action we can take, tougher action we can take around tackling short-term lets, because that also adds to our difficulty in having available accommodation. So if we can get an exit strategy from this as early as possible, and also use the money that we're currently using to get either build or lease or whatever, pockets of temporary accommodation around the city, so that families, if they do have to move out of their home for whatever reason, through no fault of their own, relationship breakdowns, health, whatever, that we can house people in temporary accommodation that is clean, warm, affordable to heat, and close to where the children go to school, close to where people go to work, because, as we've heard from the deputation, this problem affects so many families in work, and when they are placed in horrendous conditions in bed and breakfast, so far away from their schools and their local support networks, it really puts added stress and strain on our families and on our children. So I want to see an end to the amount of displaced families. Yes, the number of people in temporary accommodation is going down, but the length of stay is still far too long, and we should never, ever be putting families with children in bed and breakfast, and worse than that, we should not be having them separated from parents and children in the same, I can imagine that parents just don't get a sleep at night, worrying if their children are not in the same level or floor or room. So I welcome the deputation. I hope that everybody will support this motion unanimously across this chamber, because this is a shame in our city that so many people who are trying their best, keeping a roof over their head and keeping their families together are having to suffer in these circumstances. And I urge the Council to act upon this decisively and swiftly so that we address this meaningfully. Thank you, Lord Provost.
Councillor Lang.
Thank you very much, Lord Provost. And can I also add my thanks to Councillor Watt for the motion which she has brought forward today. On the Housing and Economy Committee, we have talked about this issue, had some very powerful discussions, heard some very powerful deputations over the course of almost 2 years now. And I think that Councillor Watt is to be commended for bringing forward quite a practical plan in terms of how we actually turn what has been a lot of good intentions and warm words into some practical action that also builds on top of, I think, the excellent work that was done by the Homelessness Task Force, that I thought was a real model for how different political parties can come together and try and address a problem. Lord Provost, can I also pay tribute to L.I.FT, who gave the deputation earlier on. They are obviously based in Muirhouse Millennium Centre in my ward, and I think it's important for colleagues to understand that what we heard today was only part of the service which they offer. On top of trying to help homeless people, they also do a huge amount of work in terms of sourcing donations and trying to find some really basic things that they can provide to people who often don't have the essentials in life, and just trying to help people in terms of a better quality of life. I've been down and I've met with Pauline and her team. I find the work that they do utterly inspiring, and I think they are to be commended. From our part, as I think you've heard from some of my colleagues today, I think we're particularly alarmed to hear that families, young families, are being split up, not just within B&B accommodation, but sometimes at separate sites. I find that utterly astonishing, and I really hope that's something we can look at again. In fact, I hope it's something we might be able to explore in next week's Housing and Economy Committee, when officers will be present and we can talk about that a little bit more. But for today at least, again, I want to finish where I started by thanking Councillor Watt. I think it's an excellent motion, and I hope we get unanimity in the Chamber today. Thank you.
I have no other elected members indicating to speak, and I hear no one speaking. Oh, Councillor Arthur.
I would like to thank Councillor Watt as well for bringing this forward. I think, without embarrassing her too much, this came out of one of our many budget discussion meetings, where actually she did get quite emotional and quite angry about the things that people are facing day to day in our capital city. And I think all of us have read in the newspapers about the state of these B&Bs, and have been disgusted by the amount of money we're spending on them, and how a minority of landlords are making money out of quite difficult situations for people. We've all wrung our hands about this and said it's a crisis and said it's terrible, but Mandy actually stood up and did something about it. So I absolutely congratulate her for that. So if you look at the stats, homelessness in Scotland, the presentations are the lowest they've been in 25 years, which you would never believe that, actually, given the kind of testimonies we've seen today. And part of that is due to the work of the Scottish Government and the preemptive action they've taken to stop homelessness happening. But that is, if you read the Homelessness Monitoring Report, which was published in February this year, that is very clear that that work is stagnating, and that should be a concern to us. Likewise, we shouldn't let the Tories off the hook with the impact of welfare reform is having on homelessness. But the State of the Nation report on homelessness in Scotland was written just before the Scottish Government decided to delay implementing their welfare powers, and it speaks quite positively about the impact those powers could have on homelessness. And obviously that's a lost opportunity now. But despite those low statistics in Scotland, Edinburgh has broken a law apparently 466 times in the way it uses bed and breakfast. Some of our bed and breakfasts are compared to prisons, and we're even sending people as far afield as Motherwell to live in bed and breakfasts. We should all be ashamed of this. It's absolutely unacceptable. So that's why I thank Mandy for bringing this forward. I really do. And I think this is, like I say, we've all spoke about that, but she stood up and acted. And I hope we all, including in the Housing and Economy Committee next week, Councillor Lang, really push officers to come forward with inventive solutions to this problem. Because it's easy to say nothing can be done and it's too complicated. And I hope that if extra money is needed to solve this problem, all of us will unite in asking for that money. Thank you.
I have no further indications to speak. I hear nobody speaking against the motion. Are we agreed? Thank you. We'll now go into a short recess if we are back for business at 25:02, please.